Welcome back, third grade scientists. This week in your science lessons, you are studying winds. So today we're going to pause and talk a little bit more about winds and dig in a little deeper and talk about how wind changes the shape of the land. So let's get going. Take a look at this photo. While you're looking, I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pencil, just a place where you could jot down some notes. While looking at this photo, first, I just want you to think about what you observe. In other words, just what can you see with your eyes? When you look at this photo, jot down, take a minute or two, jot down 2 or 3 things that you see. Now, based on what you see, I'm sure you're starting to have some questions and thinking about this photo. So now I want you to take a minute or two, jot down 1 or 2 things that you wonder. What are some questions you have about what's happening in this photo? Now that you have some notes taken on what you see and what you question or wonder, let's put those things together and make some inferences. Inferences are decisions we make, but based on what we see and what we know and questions we have about what we're learning. So now that you've taken a moment to look at the photo and write down some observations, and taking a moment to write down some questions, what are some decisions or inferences you're making about what's happening in this photo? If your observations and your questions and your inferences all have to do with winds, then you are on the right track. So today we'll do a short wind investigation. Today we're going to investigate the following questions. What is wind? Where does it come from? Can we see it? How can we measure it? And how can we use wind to our benefit? So let's stop and first talk about the question, what is wind? Wind is air in motion. It is made of the uneven heating of the Earth's surface by the sun. Because the Earth's surface is made of different land and water types, it absorbs the sun's heat unevenly. When the air heats up unevenly, wind is made. As the sun warms the Earth's surface, the atmosphere warms too. Some parts of the Earth receive direct rays from the sun all year and are always warm. Other places receive indirect rays, so the climate is colder. These are some concepts about weather and climate that we talked about last week. Warm air, which weighs less than cold air, rises. Remember our little cloud in the cup? And then the cool air moves in and replaces the rising warm air. This movement of air is what makes the wind blow. So although we can't see air with our eyes, we can see the effect that wind is having on the objects on the earth. So how can we measure wind? Well, there are different ways we can measure wind. We can measure how fast the wind is blowing or its speed. We can measure its direction. In other words, which way is it blowing? And we can measure the effects it has on Earth. The first tool we're going to look at is called an anemometer. It is used to measure wind speed. In my next video, I'm going to teach you how to make your own anemometer at home so that you can go outside and try to measure the wind speed on your own. There are many different kinds, but the most common kind is called a cup anemometer. It looks like a pole with 4 arms and a cup on each end. As the wind blows, it pushes the cups and the anemometer spins around. The faster it spins, the more the wind is blowing. Let's look at a real-life example of an anemometer. So if you've ever seen anything that looks like this up on a pole, now you know what it's called. And this tool tells us how fast the wind is blowing. Another way we can measure winds is to measure its direction. The direction of the winds is measured with a tool called a weather vane. It can also be called a wind vane. And I know in your lessons this week, you looked at ways to make your own wind vane at home. One end of the weather vane is larger and heavier, and the other end is lighter and usually shaped in a point or as an arrow. As the wind blows, it pushes the lighter end toward the direction the wind is blowing. So you're thinking about the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. And the direction that the wind is coming from can also affect its temperature. Here is a real life example of a weather vane. Maybe you've seen one and not realized that's what you were looking at. This tool tells the direction of the wind. Finally, we can measure how strong the wind is blowing. The Beaufort Scale is a measure of the intensity of the weather based mainly on wind power. The scale was created by the British naval commander Sir Francis Beaufort around 1806. It uses the numbers from 0 to 12 to represent a scale from calm to hurricane. This can be a lot of fun, actually. You may want to take a picture of this and you take it with you outside and see if you can get a measurement of the winds based on the Beaufort scale. The levels go from 0 to 12 based on how fast the wind is blowing, how many miles per hour. The lowest level would be a calm wind, building up to the highest intensity of hurricane winds. The descriptions you see on the right tell how you can determine the wind's intensity by looking at its effects on the objects around you on Earth. So if the wind is super calm and smoke can rise vertically without being blown or moved, that's a super calm wind. But if dust, leaves, loose papers are blowing around when you go outside, you might categorize that at a level 3 and a gentle breeze. But if you look up at the trees and the large branches of the trees are in motion, then that might move you up to a level 5 or a fresh breeze. But if trees are being uprooted, major damage is happening to buildings, and it's widespread, now we're at a level 12, hurricane force winds. So you probably wouldn't even be outside for those. So this can be fun. The next time you go outside and you feel the wind, see if you can place the wind's intensity on the Beaufort scale. What category would you put it in based on your observations? The next time you experience a windy day, think about all the things you've learned about winds. You're amazing third grade scientists. Keep exploring, keep investigating, keep learning. And remember, watch out for my next video and I'll teach you how to make your own anemometer at home. Happy learning. Have a great time. Third grade science.